There's no punishment that fits the crime. Not even torture and death would be justice. Your justice will come when you burn in hell for all eternity for murdering 4 innocent children. You are a con artist, you are a monster, you are a devil in disguise. You are now forever exposed.
Faith Harris, a Michigan native, grew up with both her parents in what most would call a wholesome household. Her father, Fred Harris, was a pastor, and growing up, Faith went to church regularly. At 14 years old, while at church, she met a young man by the name of Gregory Green, originally from Dearborn Heights, Michigan. They shared a few words with each other, but nothing ever came from their brief acquaintance. And in fact, Faith hadn't even seen Greg again for more than 15 years because Greg was incarcerated for a total of 16 years. You see, Greg went into the penitentiary at just 25 years old in 1991. However, many of Greg's loved ones wanted him out, and one of those people being Faith's father, Pastor Fred Harris. Pastor Fred was one amongst many in the community who had written letters to the Michigan Parole Board on behalf of Gregory's release. Greg's mother, Tommy Green, had also written to the judge back in 1992 saying, "I don't believe Gregory is a threat to society. I don't believe a sentence will make him any better because he has suffered already and he will continue to suffer the rest of his life. I hope that you will find it in your heart to give Gregory another chance at a new life." Even a corrections worker by the name of Barbara Prentice had also vouched for him at the time, saying, "Your Honor, I know that Gregory is not a criminal, nor is he a threat to society. On the contrary, he is a very productive member and a positive contributor to society." You see, while Greg was incarcerated, he was said to have been a model inmate because he participated in different programs and stayed out of trouble despite one prison fight. So he was a good candidate for parole. And in 2008, Greg was finally released into the free world. Now, it's unclear exactly when Faith and Gregory had become acquainted with one another again. However, at some point after Greg's release, the two crossed paths with each other and actually began dating. Greg was doing pretty good for himself. He nailed a job as a water department helper with the Detroit Metro Airport. One would wonder if Faith was aware of Gregory's incarceration. Well, that's actually also unclear. You see, Faith said herself that she wasn't aware of his background, but it's not said if she knew about him being in prison and just didn't know for what reason, or if she didn't know he was in prison at all. During Greg's sentence, Faith, of course, had been living her life and was in a relationship with a man by the name of Chadney Allen Sr. The two of them produced 2 children together, Chadney Allen Jr. and Cara Allen. However, the two split up, and when Faith moved on, she moved on to Greg, and she went on to move in with him, and they got married in 2010. The two of them also produced 2 children together, daughters, their names Coy and Callie Green. All was well with the happy family for a while, until it wasn't. Neighbors say the Green family were the typical next door neighbors, well put together family with the dog in the home with the white picket fence. They say both Greg and Faith were hard workers who took great care of their children, but what the neighbors didn't know was the dark secrets that they were hiding. You see, according to Faith, Greg had become controlling and increasingly irate and aggressive. She said his mood swings and erratic behavior had become too much. It got to the point where she attempted to leave Greg on multiple occasions. She actually filed for divorce 3 different times. And after 6 years of marriage, her last attempt at filing was in August of 2016. And 1 month later, on September 21st, 2016, Faith's life took a turn for the worse. It was approximately 1:15 a.m. when 911 operators received a call from Gregory. He called them to report 4 murders and an assault at his home in the 4400 block of Hit. But you see, Greg had called the police on himself because he was the murderer. In the middle of the night, while all were asleep, Gregory took Faith and brought her down to the basement of their home. He bounded her to a chair with zip ties and duct tape, and this is when he began his torturous tirade. He slashed Faith in the face with a box cutter and shot her in the foot while she was tied down and defenseless. But it didn't stop there. You see, Greg wasn't interested in murdering Faith. He wanted to cause her this deep level of pain that no sane person could imagine. He went upstairs, grabbed his two daughters, Coy, 5 years old, and Kaylee, 4 years old, while they were asleep, and put them into their family car. He then put a plastic tube into the muffler, turning the car on to fill the vehicle with carbon monoxide, and poisoned them to death. He then removed them from the car and placed them back into their beds. He then gathered Faith's two oldest children, Chadney, 19 years old, and Cara, 17 years old, took them down into the basement, stood them in front of their mother, and made her watch as he shot them to death, shooting them multiple times. And afterwards, Greg called the police on himself. He stood in his doorway on the porch and waited for officials to arrive. And when they got there, he told them what he did, and they arrested him without incident. Less than 6 months later, on February 15th, 2017, Gregory Green pled guilty to a count of torture, assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder, felony possession of a firearm, and 4 counts of second-degree murder to the 4 children.
Apparently early this morning, 2 young kids, ages 4 and 6 years old, were asphyxiated in the car. What we're being told them is that the father who did it then takes the bodies into the house, puts them in the bed. Now, we're also being told that there are 2 teenagers in the house right now, ages 17 and 19. They were shot execution style in the basement of the house. The medical examiner just pulled up. The bodies are still in the home as we speak.
Wayne Circuit Court Judge Dana Hathaway handed Greg the sentence of 45 to 100 years incarcerated with a minimum of at least 47 years served, which would make him 97 years old if he were to be released after the 47 years. And during the trial and sentencing, Wayne County Prosecutor Tricia Gerard said that Gregory had planned the murders because he shopped for the materials just a week prior. His attorney, Charles Longstreet II, said Gregory was remorseful for his actions. And Gregory went on to speak at his sentencing, saying, "It's in God's hands. Only God can judge. I'm sorry this happened. God knows my heart. He knows how regretful, how sorry I am. Not one day that goes by I don't think of my girls. I pray that God be with Chadney and Cara. I feel bad how this has deeply impacted everyone. May God help them, help me, help us all. Unfortunately, I took the lives of Kaylee, Coy, Chadney, and Cara. I shot my ex-wife. I left my 2 girls in the car, Cara and Chadney. I shot them."
That will support me and be faithful no matter what. I'm going to dedicate to the whole family. That put aside, I have to be humble, very humble, because God knows the heart, and He knows how regretful, how sorry I am. And even now, after all this, He still has a plan. And I'm not giving up on that plan. Because God is God. And there's not one day that go by that I don't think of my girls. Not one day, often picturing them playing and talking to their Heavenly Father.
Faith Green so bravely spoke during trial. She addressed Gregory directly and said, "There is no punishment that fits the crime. Your justice will come when you burn in hell for all eternity. You are a con artist. You are a monster. You are a devil in disguise. I will not suffer as you intended. What you did not work. While I stand up here trembling with fear, I put on my bravest face to be in the same room with the man who murdered all 4 of my children, 2 of them violently in front of me with a gun. He killed my other 2 babies when they was innocently sleeping. I miss my children so much that words will never be able to explain. Some days I wish I had died. There's a hole in my heart and soul that can never be repaired. This wound will never heal."
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, Faith Green, the mother of all 4 children, would like to make a statement. I have asked your deputies if it would be okay if one of her sisters stood with her just for moral support.
It's absolutely fine. And one from April Mannion. Please say your name for the record.
Faith Green.
Okay.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied with the outcome.
There's no punishment that fits the crime. Not even torture and death would be justice.
Your justice will come when you burn in hell for all eternity for murdering 4 innocent children, all because you're insecure as a man. Plus the other 2 lives you took. You are a con artist, you are a monster, you are a devil in disguise. You are now forever exposed. I've thought over and over again what I would say, even though it doesn't even matter. First of all, I am not and did not and will not suffer like you intended for me to do. What you tried to do didn't work. I am and was a damn great mother to all of my children. I was their mother and father. I'm the one who took out the time with each and every one of them. I taught them how to do things as well as people in my family and friends. I taught Chadney how to treat a woman with respect, how to fill out a job application, mock interviews, how to pay bills, encouraging him to give his all in his schooling, producing movies and his drawings. He was a great artist. He graduated from Specs Howard for digital media arts. He wanted to be a producer to make movies. I taught Kira to stay focused, aim high. I showed her how to drive, how a young lady is to carry herself in an orderly manner. Be all that you can be. Try out for everything that you're interested in doing. Pursuing higher education. We were filling out college applications. She wanted to be an OBGYN doctor. She was going to graduate this year from high school. I taught Coy to be open to new things like learning a new language, be confident in doing her schoolwork and in herself. She loved doing arts and crafts with me, letting her imagination run wild. She loved dressing up and putting on my high heels. She would make me laugh, looking at me over her glasses like a little old lady. She loved ballet, cheerleading, and planting flowers with me. My Kaylee had the greatest memory. She loved singing. She loved to carry her purse, which was always filled with hand sanitizer and lip gloss. She loved getting her nails painted and sometimes doing it herself. She also loved ballet and cheerleading. She loved balloons and playing outside. I taught them to be giving, loving, and respectful, to help others, to volunteer. They were not selfish children. Coy and Kaylee were learning about kids less fortunate than themselves. I took them with me to purchase items for Christmas and explained to them what we were doing to make them happy. I always encouraged them and told them that they can do anything they put their minds to do. Those are the lives that you took. You tried to separate them from each other. They are siblings who loved each other and spent time with one another. Trying to split them up didn't work. They are together more than ever. Chadney and Kara are still watching over the little sisters, Coy and Kaylee, forever. I carried each one of them in my womb for 9 months and raised them. Nothing or no one, sure as hell not you, can break me or break my bond with them. But while I stand up here trembling with fear, I put on my bravest face to be in the same room with the man who murdered all 4 of my children. 2 of them violently in front of me with the gun, Chadney and Kara. And he killed my other 2 babies, Coy and Kaylee, where they were innocently sleeping. As if that wasn't enough, let me tell you about some of the devastation that it has actually done to me and my family. My short-term memory is gone. Doctors tell me it's my brain protecting me from the memories of my children being shot in their heads right in front of me, while I was gagged, duct-taped, and zip-tied. Every time I find strength to get out of bed, as soon as I walk, I'm in extreme pain, sharp pain, from where he shot me in my foot. They don't know if I'll ever walk again without pain. Think about that for a second. Never being able to walk without pain. My doctors say I have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's where the migraines and nightmares come from. Sometimes I dream of the night all this happened and wake up screaming and sweating, thinking that I can save my children somehow. Then I realize that the nightmare is actually reality and my children are really gone, and I try to find the strength to start my day somehow. Other times, there's just crazy nightmares that I wake up from in fear and try to understand them, but I'm told that they all link back to this horrific experience I have had. I can't think of the last time I really rested without medication. I can still feel the zip ties around my wrists, and it triggers horrible memories of that night. There's times I find myself drifting off into thought and then realize I'm not thinking of anything. I'm empty. Lost. I'm lost, not really knowing what to do with myself, just existing day to day. I miss my children so much that words will never be able to explain. All I ever wanted to be was a mother, a wife, have a happy family, raise my children to be productive members of society, and be happy. The reality I face now is this will never happen for me. Time will never heal this wound. I will always be empty. A part of me will always be missing. If the day ever comes when I do wake up and it's not the first thing that I think about, when I look in the mirror, I will always be reminded by the scars he put on my face, cutting me from my ears to my chin with a razor blade box cutter. The pain on the left side of my face never goes away. He cut me so deep that it severed multiple nerves that may never heal correctly. I lost so much blood. I was in critical condition for days. I should have died. Some days I wish I would have. He has scarred me for life. My whole family is devastated emotionally by what has happened. But it has extremely been hard on my parents. They love their grandchildren with all their hearts. Most days my mother has a hard time getting out of bed and has been in the hospital a few times, but my father is taking it the hardest. He's not the same person he once was. The stress has taken a toll on his health. 2 weeks ago, he was taken to the hospital because he had a stroke. I honestly don't know where to go from here. I'm numb. There's a hole in my heart and soul that can never be repaired. The loss to me is so big that I will never truly recover for the rest of my life. I will be forever in pain and heartbreak. This wound will never heal. This wound will never heal. I would like to thank the court and you, Your Honor, for the time you have allowed me to speak. I would like to thank the prosecutor's office and staff and all the police officers who helped in this case. In closing, I understand the recommendation of the sentence, but I would like to recommend, as a victim myself and the mother of all 4 murdered children, life in prison without the chance of parole. Thank you. Faith Green.
Anything more from the people?
As for Chaney Jr. and Kara's father, Chaney Sr., he expressed his woes via Facebook post on his page. He said, "My dreams were murdered. RIP to my son CJ and daughter KK. My loves. Always remembering you, my angels. Love y'all forever. Gone too soon. Thanks for all the prayers." He also spoke to 7 Action News and told them he had no idea what Faith was going through with Greg. He said there was never any mention of his abuse and he was completely clueless about his past incarcerations, which leads me into my next commentary. Now, I want to address some irony in this tragic story. As I mentioned earlier, Gregory had to serve 16 years of his life behind bars, but I never mentioned why. Well, in his early 20s, Gregory had met a woman named LaTanya, who went by Tanya, therefore that is how I will address her. Tanya, just like Faith, also already had 2 other children. It isn't said if it was from 1 man or 2 men, or even if the dad or dads were involved at all in the children's lives at that time. The timeline on Greg and Tanya's relationship also isn't clear on when they met or how long they were together or how they met. However, what is clear is the abuse that Tanya endured from Greg, just like Faith. Tanya told those closest to her how Greg had switched up on her. He started off loving and had the ideal persona of a man a woman would want to spend forever with, hence why she married him, carried his last name, and she had become pregnant at the top of 1991 with their first child together and her 3rd child in total. Unfortunately, as the relationship went on and her baby grew and grew in her womb, Gregory grew more rageful, controlling, and very jealous. And on one Sunday, on July 14th, 1991, Tanya was telling a friend of hers how erratic Greg was behaving that day. He was different in a strange way, and she wasn't sure if he was on drugs or something to that effect, but his whole energy switched up and she felt weary about it. So she decided that day she wanted to leave with her children after she attended church. She said she was going to pray, go home, pack up her stuff and the kids, and leave. Well, when Tanya arrived back home, Greg shifted Tanya's fate. He was enraged when he learned she wanted to leave, so he decided to stop her in her tracks by murdering her. Greg stabbed his pregnant wife 10 times with a steak knife in her neck, cheek, chest, back, and punctured both of her lungs. Tanya was said to either be in the last of her second trimester or the beginning of her third trimester. And just like how he did with Faith, he called the police on himself and waited for them to come in the doorway of their home. And when police arrived, he told them that Tanya was deceased in the kitchen on the floor. When all this was happening, Tanya's children were in the home, and one of them ran and hid in a closet. Thankfully, they were unharmed. At the time, they were only 8 and 5 years old. It is not clear where her children are today, and although they're adults now, I'm sure it's a trauma they've had to learn to heal from throughout their entire lives. Their father or fathers' whereabouts are still unknown to this day. In 1992, Gregory pled no contest to second-degree murder and was sentenced to a 15 to 25-year bid. Now, Greg had put in requests to the parole board 4 different times before his requests were finally granted in 2008. He filed twice in 2004 and then twice again in 2006. However, he was denied due to his lack of remorse for the crime that he committed on Tanya. And this is where all the letters on behalf of Greg's release came in from the community, including Faith's father. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, his good behavior and participation in programs is what aided in his release after serving 16 years. Faith's father said he had good faith in Gregory because they were friends before the quote-unquote mishap leading to his incarceration. The 2 letters he wrote were in 2005 and 2006, and they read, "Dear Sirs, this is a letter of support for Mr. Gregory Green. Gregory and I were friends before this mishap and he was incarcerated. He was a member of our church. I'm offering the help of the church as well as myself in any way we can be of service to Gregory. I feel he has paid for his unfortunate lack of self-control and the damage he has caused as much as possible and is sorry. This will not restore the lives that were taken. He will carry that with him for the rest of his life. We are hoping to assist Gregory in now giving to life and helping those in need through our church work in the USA as well as in other countries. Hopefully, this can pay back a portion of that which was taken. If there are questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Apostle Fred Harris. God bless." And then his other letter said, "Dear Parole Board, I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm writing this letter in support of Gregory Green. I understand he is being considered for parole. Gregory was attending our church before he was sentenced to prison. He was very faithful attendance-wise, showed a great interest in the Lord, and was very helpful. Over the years, we and some of our members have communicated with Gregory. I through visits as well as letters occasionally and others through mail. Our ministry deals with correcting behavior problems by understanding their origin, how we have been affected by them, and what we must do to change them. This procedure is called inner healing and deliverance. With this technique in mind, while interacting with Gregory, I've noticed a great deal of growth, and his understanding has matured quite a bit as well as his processing skills. If he was to be released, he would be welcome as part of our community, and whatever we could do to help him adjust, we would." Many family members and supporters of his from his community wrote letters to the judge for his murder against Tanya, saying he was a changed man, God-fearing, remorseful, loving, polite, sincere, respectful, and ready to turn his life around. Gregory clearly had a strong support system, but I'm not really sure why. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Faith said she didn't know about his history. She said she didn't go digging into his background, which left many to question. How? Her father was aware of Greg's crime. How did Faith miss this information? Well, my only conclusion is ignorance is bliss. Now, Faith revealed her attempts at leaving him began 3 years before the murders of her children happened. You see, back in 2013, Faith had filed for divorce for the first time and made her first attempt at obtaining an order of protection against Gregory. In the order of protection request, Faith stated, "He's trying to make me leave our home. We are filing for divorce. He's being belligerent, kicking things. He kicked the couch while the baby was sleeping on it, just kicking things, threatening me, and saying if I don't leave, things are going to get ugly. Jumped at me like he was going to attack me. This went on for hours." She never mentioned his previous criminal history in the request, and it is unclear if she even learned about his history at that point. Now, here's the part that personally made my blood boil. The judge who overlooked the order protection request Judge Deborah Ross Adams, a black woman, denied the order of protection, stating there was insufficient evidence to support Faith's claims against Gregory. Now, what's crazy is Judge Deborah Ross Adams was actually removed from the bench for 180 days for perjury, lying under oath, judicial misconduct, and forgery during her own divorce proceedings in court.
Judge Deborah Ross Adams thought she was facing just a suspension for her alleged behavior. Today, though, she learned her punishment could be much more severe. Judge Deborah Ross Adams is called Your Honor, but she's accused of doing some very dishonorable things. They stem from how she handled herself during her own divorce in someone else's courtroom. Adams was married to former Deputy Detroit Mayor Anthony Adams. According to the state's Judicial Tenure Commission, who polices judges, Ross Adams forged the signatures of 2 of her divorce attorneys, and they say she wasn't truthful when, under oath, she denied trying to contact the presiding judge in her divorce case. Because of all that, the JTC has asked that Ross Adams be suspended without pay for 6 months. But today, in a surprise move, the JTC's examiner, Paul Fisher, asked for an even harsher penalty, that Ross Adams be taken off the bench entirely. Lying under oath, he said, warrants a harsher punishment than just a suspension. Ross Adams' lawyer pushed back today, saying that the judge was under lots of pressure during her divorce, she did nothing wrong, and deserves no punishment at all.
I guess misery really loves company, because instead of helping another black woman who was going through such a dark time seeking help to get away from her abusive husband, and you yourself were even going through flaming hoops to depart from your husband, you decided to hinder this woman even further by denying her request. And I wonder, is it even fair to say that Judge Adams may have even aided in the outcome of Faith's loss? As of recent days, Faith's road to recovery has been hard. She's had to deal with short-term memory loss, migraines, and suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, plus the nightmares she has to experience regularly. Faith says she misses her 4th children every waking moment and is still coping with the tragedy that happened 6 years ago. While Faith says that she sometimes wishes she too would have died that night, she hopes she's able to keep her kids' legacy alive.
As her children were murdered at the hands of her own husband, is speaking out tonight for the very first time.
Because it's like my heart is broken. It's like you try to, I don't know, you try to find stuff to fill it with, but it's just like you still have this big black hole in your heart that's never going to be filled. I miss them so much, and it's hard to go on when you see people with their kids, and then if you have to go to the store, it's like you try to hurry up and pass the clothes, because then it's like, oh, I would have bought that for them, and then it's like, people may say like, oh, she's smiling, she looks okay, but really I'm not. I don't know, I gotta go on.
How are you doing? I mean, you mentioned the short-term memory loss.
Honestly, I have a lot of bad days. My depression has gotten worse. I used to didn't believe those commercials where they say depression hurts. It really hurts. There's days I cannot get up. I have to kind of pep talk myself. It's it's a hard day. It's hard. This year is worse than last year. I did write something to tell everybody. I'm sorry.
Take your time. Take your time.
I just wanted to take this time out to say thank you to everyone that donated in any way to help my family and I during the tragedy we gone through. So many people wrote letters, sent flowers, visited me, and prepared food. When you lose a child, I can't even explain it. Once you're a mom and you give birth, that connection, and it's a hard thing to deal with. It's very hard, whether it's 1, whether it's 4, it's very hard. you know, and it's like, I don't know if you ever really come to the realization of it.
From what we can tell, Faith currently lives in Southfield, Michigan, and continues to recover from her ordeal. As for Gregory, prison records show that he remains incarcerated at Gus Harrison Correctional Facility in Adrian, Michigan. The earliest that Gregory can be released is in 2063. He is currently 55 years old, and there has been talks about a possible documentary about this case in the works. And now for my thoughts. This is another story about discernment, or a lack thereof. I'm still befuddled as to how Faith was unaware of Greg's history. Her father was very involved with this man's situation, and she is very close to her father. It makes me wonder, did she choose blissful ignorance as to why he was incarcerated, or was she unaware he was ever in jail in general? And as for her father, was he so enamored with religion that he truly believed Greg was the man for Faith? That he truly believed Greg could change and turn his life around? Did he not warn his daughter about who she was dealing with? And why did he go so hard for this man to be released to begin with? I understand that he called Greg a friend. However, how much of a friend was he to him really? This man, Gregory, was a child when he attended church with Faith. Therefore, I don't see how much of a friend he was to someone that much younger than him. Why was Greg's history such a secret? I'm sure if Chadney Sr. knew about this, he would have never been okay with his children being raised by a callous murderer. Greg clearly had zero regards for any human life, not even the lives of his own children. His unborn, Coy, Kaylee, all produced by him and executed by him. Although he ended Coy and Kaylee's lives in a quote-unquote peaceful way, for a lack of better words, it still makes me nauseous just thinking about it. As I was researching this story, I found myself asking, why did he hate the families he created so much? He hated Faith so badly, he wanted to leave her alive to deal with the survivor's guilt, to live every day with the images of her children being murdered in front of her face, to suffer with every breath that she takes. And Tanya, poor Tanya, she never got the chance to watch her children grow, attend their graduations, celebrate their birthdays, help them with homework, or any of the things she looked forward to doing with them as a mom. And even then, Greg made sure that her children would live on in suffering, knowing their mother was lying deceased on the kitchen floor would be their last memory of her. I wonder if Faith has ever blamed her father for their reunion. My heart goes out to all the loved ones of the victims in this story, and I commend Faith for being so brave and standing strong when she faced the soulless Gregory Green in court. I'm sending her, Chadney Sr., and Tanya's loved ones my deepest condolences, and I pray for healing in their lives. May Greg never ever see another day of freedom in his raggedy life. May Tanya, her unborn, Chadney Jr., Kyra, Coy, and Kaylee all rest in spiritual peace.